What up, YouTube? It's your boy, Mr. Ocelot, back again with another at-home product review. Today I'm bringing you guys out on my first trail ride of Project Banshee, which is my $600 Walmart e-mountain bike, which I've souped up with $2,260 worth of parts off of Amazon, eBay, Alibaba. I'm riding a lot more conservative than I normally would, because my now $3,000 Walmart bike, after I customize it, when you buy a bespoke off-the-shelf e-bike, you know, the manufacturer, yeah, they're making money off you, but they're also getting like wholesale pricing on all the parts. Like a fork. This fork, for example, I paid $256 for it. It's a 100 millimeter RockShox fork. Yeah, I'm guessing if you buy a 100 millimeter RockShox fork as part of a bike, they're not paying 250 bucks for it, because they're buying like 1,000 of them. So RockShox cuts them a deal. So that kind of like is one example of why I would not recommend doing this unless you want to build a bike and you're willing to pay for it and be patient. So I wouldn't really recommend doing this, you know, building your own bike, unless you're willing to pay a little extra for the privilege of designing, speccing, and building your own bike. So it's fun. It's fun because it's cheaper and worse. But you know, the cheapness, that's a key differentiator between a $2,800, $2,900 bike and a $6,000 bike. I believe the Cube is actually selling for $6,150 now. So yeah, most people can't really swing that, and you're not gonna have a great, oh, let's see, I'm gonna stop because this is a little too steep. I could have gotten that. I was just being cautious, I guess. But yeah, $6,150 for a bike, that's a little, that's a big commitment. You gotta be in a good place financially to swing that. So I do think so far my $2,800 bike is a better buy. And I am the type of guy that I've got the time. I love biking. I love tinkering on stuff. So like I am actually like willing to say that this is maybe a better buy than just buying a $2,900 bike for me, because that's entertainment for me. That's not a pain in the ass. And I got a main bike I can just use if I want to go for a ride without worrying about like waiting on a cable from China. So yeah, when I took out the old motor, I had to remove the old wheel in the rear, because that's kind of like integrated with the motor, the stock motor. Took out that wheel, took out the controller, which is inside the battery compartment, just kind of just forward of the battery. You just take out 4 screws and pull out the controller. So disconnected those things. The wire going from the controller to the stock motor, I just kind of, I think I just, yeah, what did I do with that? I think I actually just like taped it off. I put some electrical tape on both ends and just stashed it away. Just in case I want to convert this bike back to stock ever. I don't think I would. It would not be a fun bike for me anymore if I did that, but just have the optionality. And then the controller you just chuck in your spare parts bin. So I did actually buy a programming cable from Amazon. It was like Prime overnight delivery, because when I fired up my motor, which I got off of AliExpress, it didn't power on. And I do have a little bit of an electrical engineering background. I got an undergraduate degree in computer engineering. So just from like troubleshooting by connecting stuff, disconnecting stuff, taking voltmeter measurements of what's getting power, what isn't, looking at pin diagrams on the internet, kind of figure out that the display that I got off of Blue Energia on AliExpress, it was not powering up, even though it was getting power. So as a workaround for now, while I wait for my replacement display that they're sending me from China, I just got an overnight delivery of a Bafang programming cable. It's a USB cable on one end, and on the other end it connects to the Bafang motor. And inside the cable, it shorts 2 pins to allow you to engage the motor without a display. So I'm just riding my motor without a display right now. You lose the ability when you do that to calibrate on the fly how much assistance the motor's given you, because there's no button or anything that I can do to change that while I'm riding right now. But I'm still out, and in the meantime it just gives you max power. Max power is user selectable using the cable, your phone or computer, and an app. It's free. You know, this build took me 2 months because I was waiting for like parts from China, install them, and then I realized I needed more parts from China. So in 2022, with supply chains and shipping delays and all that, you got to be patient. I also personally am not mechanically inclined, so I hired a local bike mechanic. Shout out to my boy Dietrich. Oh, I got a seat dropper on this baby. So right now it's raised pretty high so I can straighten my leg when I'm pedaling. And that's what you would do on like a road bike, right? To get max power. Like think about if you're doing squats at the gym. It's a lot easier to lift that weight when your leg is nearly straight than it is to when your leg is bent at a 90-degree angle. So that's what a seat dropper offers you. You can get it high when you're climbing, like I am now, or when you're going downhill. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to lower it all the way down, slam it down. So my knees are pretty well bent now. I'm lower on the bike, and I'm off the saddle now, putting my behind over my rear tire, so that my weight, even though I'm going downhill, my center of gravity is just vertically on top of the bike's center of gravity. So that's how that works. Now that it's out on the trail, it does feel like it's all worth it. The slack on this mountain bike frame, the slack angle, you know, like the angle forward that the fork is angled at, it is a steeper angle, a more vertical fork than what I'm used to. So you really feel like you're leaning more forward on the bike, which is good for climbing. It's not really great when you're going downhill, but that's just like a minor complaint, I guess. Ooh, got a steep section here. Let me just stop talking so I can concentrate. These brakes are killer. I got some legit Tektro 203mm rotors, and they're hydraulic, so the braking is just as good as my $6,000 bike. Okay, this is a little bit, let me see if it gets up here okay. Yeah. Hey. I just want to reiterate, these brakes are like money. I mean, they cost a lot of money. They were $300, I think, and but worth every penny. If you're not going down hills like this, and you're just maybe looking at upgrading your bike for flat trails, you don't need big brakes like this. You might even be able to just get by with the stock mechanical 160mm disc brakes, but you know, they're super loud. They're require a lot of kind of forearm pump to stop from a high speed, and they take a long time to stop. So that's where hydraulics come in, and you don't need Tektro 203mm rotors. But one thing that Tony Ferreira found, he's got a video on YouTube about it, is these hydraulic Okay, I think they're 2-piston hydraulic brakes, whereas these Tektros I got are 4-piston. They're 2-piston, so half is good. And the actuation of the hydraulic is at the caliper, not at the lever. So it's a lot less hydraulic fluid in there to do the work for you. But they still look pretty good. He was saying that they're an upgrade, and they're only like 65 bucks. I think they're Zoom branded off of Amazon. You know, some Chinese no-name junk, but if it works better than the stock brakes, 60 bucks, that seems worth it to me. I guess that's up to your own personal situation. Those seem like a good buy though. Climbing, on like a steady climb like this Bafang BBS02 motor is great. Now you may have just noticed, I'm not sure if the camera picked that up, but when I shift, I got a shift sensor on this motor, so it turns off momentarily when I'm shifting gears. That could be a problem. It's necessary to do that, but that could be a problem when climbing up super steep hills, because it just means you need to get in the proper gear like before you get to the hill, before you're under load climbing. Because for that split second when you're shifting gears, the motor's not helping you. If it's a steep enough hill, it'll stop you, and then you're gonna have a hard time getting started again. So to maintain speed uphill with like an aftermarket motor like this, it's a little less sophisticated than what I'm used to. You need to be in the proper gear before you get to the hill. So that is one of those things I think that, as like a, I don't know, intermediate to experienced rider, I don't mind, because that's going to teach me to be a better bicyclist, a better mountain biker. Like, where I really should be looking ahead, planning my shifts anyways. Yeah, so I'm probably going to talk a lot in this video about my main bike and how this performs regular to my main bike. You know, that bike has a Bosch motor, which is like just more modern and better integrated with the bike than this guy is. You know, this motor was 450 bucks. That's a budget motor. The Bosch has a torque sensor on it, so it's a lot different than this, which has a cadence sensor. So like a torque sensor is measuring the force I put on the pedals and then just multiplying my force. So I put a little bit of force in there, it'll put a little bit of force. And if I really give it everything I got, it'll assist more. It's like an adaptive power assistant, where the harder I am pedaling, the harder it will assist. This, on the other hand, uses a cadence sensor, which is measuring how much of the crank turn I'm doing. And I set it right now using a programming cable to 2 degrees. So if I turn the chainring 2 degrees, the motor will engage at whatever you set it at. I set that initial assist at 20% of max power. You can get the phantom pedaling like you get on the Hyper E-Ride 29er, where, like, right now, for example, I'm just very gently pedaling. I don't even feel any resistance to keep the bike moving forward, but the motor is still helping me because I've got that phantom pedaling issue. So I'm pedaling with no resistance and the motor's still helping me. You wouldn't get that on a torque sensor motor. So if you want like a more modern kind of, I guess, like precise pedal assist, I would highly recommend just springing extra to get like a torque sensing motor, like a Tongsheng or that Bosch, you know, Shimano, Bros, just higher end, more newer motor systems. Power wise, I do feel like this is powerful enough that I can do this whole loop once I get comfortable with the riding a hardtail and better planning out my shifts. The power is no problem. I got plenty of power to climb all these hills, and this would have been impossible with my stock ride. the stock Hyper E-Ride 29er. Just because I'm not strong enough of a pedaler, and that motor kind of cuts out like when you most need it. I know Tony Ferreira, you know, he goes everywhere in Vegas, up steep hills and everything, but he's one of those guys, and I don't know if y'all know this or if Tony even knows this, but he's one of those guys that is just a beast. He doesn't even need a motor. I'm sure he would get up those trails that he does without a motor, without putting his foot down on the ground. And that's really the whole point of an e-bike, is like this hill right now. I mean, this is not extreme, but it's steep enough that I wouldn't be pedaling this on an analog bike. No way. Another thing about motors, you know, comparing the Bafang to a Bosch and even to the stock Hyper motor, you know, when you see those stats, 250 watts, 500 watts, 750 watts, or how much current it's drawing, those are not apples to apples comparisons between what the power you're going to feel in the motor, because that's just the power output. That's just the amount of electricity the motor is using. But across the different brands, the power efficiency in converting that electrical energy from the battery into torque on the trail, they each have their own specs. So I wouldn't worry too much about comparing the across brands, you know, like I don't think a 250 watt Bosch motor can be compared to a 250 watt Bafang motor, and certainly not to the 250 watt Hyper motor. But yeah, as I was saying, the 250 watt Hyper motor, that is not at all comparable to a 250 watt mid-drive of any brand. You're gonna get just like a magnitudes more torque on the trail to help you climb up steep technical obstacles, like, you know, like this terrain, with really even like the weakest mid-drive motor is going to be, I don't know, like 10 times better climbing a steep hill like this than the stock Hyper motor. In case you couldn't tell, I really did not care for the stock Hyper motor, but I am still stoked that I got a integrated frame and battery for $600. That's just an amazing buy. I really did not want to buy a regular mountain bike and soup it up with a battery and motor, because I didn't want a giant motor hanging off the frame. Just aesthetically, I wouldn't be able to look at a bike with a giant brick of a battery hanging on the frame. Ooh. Okay, drivetrain, let's talk about that. This drivetrain is just as good as what I'm used to. My Cube, I think it has a SRAM NX, which is like, has a huge gear in the back for climbing super duper steep hills like this. So I think it's 50 teeth in the back of this gear, and then I've got a 36 tooth chainring up front. So that ratio, 50 divided by 36, that's telling you the higher that number is, the steeper you can climb. So I'm climbing up this super steep hill without having to walk up, which is really the whole point of having an e-bike motor. I don't need that motor when I'm going downhill. I really don't even want it when I'm on flat ground, unless it's just some boring fire road. I need it for this, going uphill. Ooh. Yeah, now that I'm on a hardtail, that's taking some getting used to also, you know, just like going down a small little hill like that, every little bump, every little rock you go over, I feel it in my behind. It's not like my plush full suspension bike where really none of those bumps are transferred to the rider because it's just absorbed by the suspension. This is a pretty steep hill, but hey, I'm on an e-bike, so I should have no problem coming back up here. definitely got to use more of your legs as a suspension on this bike. You kind of get off the saddle, let your legs and your body absorb the bumps, since there's no shock back there doing it for you. This fork, you know, it's not bothering me too much. I haven't had any heavy hits. It's definitely helping with the damping a lot more than the stock fork. That stock fork is a pogo stick. I mean, it's a joke. I wouldn't say that fork is worth more than like $10 to me if I was like trying to assess how much each component should sell for. Yeah, I'm liking this hardtail. I mean, it keeps you on your toes, you know? Like, I get a little spoiled and complacent with having a shock. I just know I'm gonna have traction. I know that the bumps will not be absorbed, you know, put on my body. But with this hardtail, you gotta be a little more cautious and plan ahead more. My normal bike, being a 27.5 wheels, a little lower to the ground compared to this 29er. And then also having, you know, I usually have 2.6 wide or 2.8 wide, 2.8 inch wide tires on that guy. So just a lot more rubber on the road. And that's suspension. You know, the suspension's not there just for comfort. It's there to keep the tires on the ground. And this doesn't have that in the rear. And it's only got 100 mils in the front. So I'm gonna go a lot slower today than I normally go. I mean, when I'm going down some of these steep hills on my regular bike, I might get up to 35 miles an hour sometimes and just not worry about washing out. This bike, I'm probably gonna limit myself. I don't have a speedometer at the moment, but I'll probably limit myself to about 22 miles an hour. That's probably the point at which I'd start getting scared about stability and traction. At least until I get more experience. Yeah, so these tires, they're Maxxis DHR2s, front and rear. That is not my ideal setup at all. The DHRs are meant for going on the rear. That's what they're designed for. But they were just the best I could find in 29-inch diameter and 2.4 inch width. The stock tires are 2.3 inch wide. So, you know, you'd think you could go to 2.5, 2.6 maybe. But the stock wheels, which I still have the stock wheel up front, they are not designed for tubeless. And despite my unboxing impressions, they are not taped. They do not come pre-taped. And they were a pain in the ass to get a tubeless tire onto. I tried unsuccessfully for a couple nights. I sent it to my mechanic, and he struggled with it for a while, I think too, until he finally got it. And when I asked him how the build went, he said, dude, that wheel was a pain. But he got it done. If you're gonna have big spiky pedals like these, you're gonna wanna have flat-soled shoes. No running shoes, no trail running shoes with big knobs on them. You just want flat soles. So the two types of shoes that are good for those, sticking onto these spiky pedals, is either mountain bike shoes, which usually have some padding around the ankle, and maybe they might be a little higher to keep dirt out of your shoes. Or, surprisingly, skateboarding shoes are pretty good. They have nearly identical flat rubber soles on the bottom. And also, I believe like indoor soccer shoes, you know, like an Adidas Samba, that might also work pretty good for these mountain bike pedals. So if you have a pair of those, don't worry about buying mountain bike shoes yet. I left the kickstand on there. Love the kickstand. It just comes in handy all the time, even on the trail when I'm taking a break or stopping at the taco shop to get my breakfast burrito. Really nice having a kickstand. Don't have to lean it against a pole and worry about the bike falling down. Well guys, I was afraid this might happen. I pulled over just to check on my GoPro battery and my bike battery, and one big question I had about was the range of the 280 watt-hour battery. And I probably biked about 3.5, yeah, maybe 3 or 3.5 miles straight uphill. I would guess like 700 feet of climb, maybe. And the battery, which was probably at like 90% charge, 80% charge when I left, it is now red. So, you know, it's got more than 30 volts, I believe, because the motor is programmed to cut out at 30 volts. But I don't think that battery is going to get me home for this whole 10 or 11 mile loop, which was my ultimate goal. It did get me up here. I would say it's probably like maybe 70% of the climbing you would need to complete this loop. No, it's probably realistically like half. So no worries. You know, one thing I did kind of realize about this bike is that you can get more of these Hyper batteries from Hyper, direct from Hyper, for 200 bucks. Or maybe you could buy one off someone off of Facebook for less than that. I'd have a lot more fun if I was going faster. But I can still do the time, right? Yeah. Oh boy, it's like totally different. I'm not as good of a rider when I don't have electric assistance, that's for sure. I'm glad I got a good drivetrain to help me out. If I had just the stock bike, I would be very concerned about how much walking I got left to get home. All right, I'm hiking. I think what I can do to have more range is use a lower pedal assist setting, which will make it less fun going up hills, but also get up them. And for now, I can program it to go at maybe 18, 16 amps, something like that. And then once I get my replacement display, I'll be able to select the pedal assist on there. Yeah, this is the part of biking I hate. Pushing a bike uphill when you could have just been walking without a 55 pound bike